Good morning, everybody. Today we'll be covering the topic of global ethical and sustainable marketing. So what we'll be talking about today is basically what do you need to do or think about before you decide to go overseas and start your business, right? So this chapter is going to cover multiple factors that marketers or business owners have to keep in mind before they decide to go overseas. So there are mainly four steps that you need to think about. First, whether you want to go global or not, right? That's a big decision. Factors behind that would be whether you see the benefits of going overseas at all, or you feel like, okay, doing business here at home is adequate. Then you probably don't need to go overseas. You can look at the demand, if there's a demand overseas for your products or not, or you can look at the competitive advantage that you have, whether you can compete successfully with your competitors overseas or not. Also, you can look at helps from multiple organizations like WTO or some of the business agreement like GATT or NAFTA, after things like that. Also, another thing you need to think about would be the protectionism restrictions that you may have to face, something like quotas, embargoes, or tariffs. So after you decide, all right, there's the demand for it, you have a competitive advantage to go overseas, then the next thing would be you decide to go. Next thing you need to think about would be how you're going to enter the market. There are four multiple ways to look at that, basically. First, you need to look at which market to enter, right? Based on multiple elements. You can do the market environment analysis. Look at the economy at the time. You can look at the technological, facilities and things like that. You can look at the political environment. You can look at the competitive environment, and you can look at the sociological environment of that market. After you look at all of those factors, you decide, all right, I'm going to go to this particular country. Then you move on to the next step, which we call the level of commitment. This is when you decide, what would be the best way for you to enter the market. Right? We have four different strategies that you can choose. One is exporting, contractual agreement, strategic alliances, a joint venture, and then direct investment. Out of these four strategies, you choose them based on how much risk you would like to take and also how much control you would like to have. So for the first one, exporting, this is probably the easiest one because you don't really have to do much of anything. You simply just pack your stuff in the box and then just ship them overseas. And you may have a partner over there that will open the box and start selling business for you, or you can sell directly to consumers. Right, that's the first one. The second one, contractual agreement or franchising. You guys are probably familiar with the term franchising, right? This is when you sell the right to use your brand name, to sell your product to the third party. So they will give you some kind of franchise fees, and they get to use and sell your products. There's some restriction though. You provide them some guideline or some standard or rules that they have to follow. Next strategy would be what we call the strategic alliances or the joint venture. This is when you find the foreign partners and then you work with them. Right? It's like two parties or three parties work together. There's some good and bad of using this strategy. The good thing is that you don't really have to go overseas and start from scratch. You work with someone who already there and who knows the market, know how to reach consumers, know suppliers. Okay. However, the problem that always occurs when you do the joint venture is the miscommunication or the conflict between parties, right? Because literally sometimes they don't speak the same language, and culturally, two companies may come from two completely different culture. So the way they manage things, the way they do business can be completely different. And then we have the next one, direct investment. This is when you want to gain the most control, but at the same time, you need to take the most risk. So in this case, you go there by yourself, start everything from scratch, and then start your business. So again, as I mentioned earlier, it depends on how much risk you would rather take and how much control you would like to make or to have. Next, you move on to the next step, or the final step, is when you start creating the promotion and marketing mix for that particular market. There are two main concepts I would like you guys to know about. One we call the localization, and the other one we call the standardization. For the first one, localization. This is when you try to focus on the local preferences or tastes. Right? So whatever you make, you tailor, you change, you adapt them according to the local. For the standardization, this is when you try to find markets that are not that sensitive when it comes to preference or taste, and you try to create the products that are very generic, that everybody's going to like. So in this case, you can take advantage of mass production. Right? If you heard of this term before, mass production is when you try to produce as much as possible, and when you do that, you can keep the cost low, which in turn could increase more profit. Another thing you need to think about is the marketing mix. Right? We know the 4 P's: product, price, place, and promotion. When you go overseas, you may or may not be able to use your 4 P's that you use at home. So you have to create new ones. The first one, the product, or the first P. There's some strategies that you could do. One we call the product straight extension, adaptation, invention, and backward invention. The first one, straight extension. This is when you pretty much sell exactly the same thing that you sell in your home country and you sell that overseas. These will be things that are very generic. You don't really need a whole lot of that to change anything. Then we have the product adaptation, which you adapt it a little bit according to the local market. Then we have product invention, which create a new product to that particular market. And then we have the backward invention, which basically try to dumb down the products a little bit, make it easier and less complicated. So consumers, who may or may not be educated, or they may not have enough facilities to use, be able to use them. For the price, you also have to think about that as well, because besides currency difference, people may or may not have the same amount of income, right? Especially when you try to focus on the third world market, where you don't have or you don't earn a lot of money. So you may not be able to charge them the same price as you do at home. Then we have the place, right, where to sell the products. You have to choose them strategically, and then we have the promotion, how to promote the products. Right? One thing that tend to happen, a problem, is that because different countries, they have their own languages. So if you try to translate your language into another language, it might be something that get lost in translation. So this is a technique that we call the back translation that will help preventing this kind of thing from happening. Back translation is when you use 2 interpreters, right, who are fluent in both languages. Like let's say you want to create another message in Spanish, right? So you have this interpreter interpret English and translate that into Spanish, right? And then we have the second interpreter translate the Spanish message back to English again. So now we have 2 versions of the English message, right? And then you look at these 2, the first one and the second one. If they are pretty much identical or very similar to each other, then it's good. But quite often you see that the first version and the second version tend to be quite different, because when you try to translate into another language, something might get lost, and the way people interpret certain words or certain slangs may be completely different, and this technique will prevent that mistake from happening. Then there's the concept of the bottom of the pyramid. This, we are talking about billions of people who make very, very little, right? So they may or may not have enough money to buy your products. This is a huge market, very good potential market that will be nice to be able to tap into that market. So you need to think about how you're going to get them to purchase your products, right? And one thing that a lot of companies are doing is to try to sell the products very cheap in like a very very small package, like one of those free sample stuff that you get when you go to the mall, when you go to the grocery stores. Right? Those are the things that are being sold in those countries because people cannot afford to buy the full size product. Now here comes the ethical issues of marketing. Right? When we talk about ethical behavior, this is something quite sensitive and something that it's hard to decide whether it is right or wrong because it depends on how you look at it. Certain things are very obvious, especially when you break the rules or laws, right? You might be arrested. But for certain business behavior, it becomes a little bit of the blur line there, kind of in the gray area. It depends on how you look at it and depends on a lot of other things. Right? Most businesses, they tend to have what we call the code of ethics, which basically is a written standard of what you should do or shouldn't do. Right? With that code of ethics, make it easier for companies to be ethical because they have this sets of rules that they can follow. However, though, in some countries, if you follow this link, you see the results of this one organization that collected data about corruption from all of the countries in the world, and you see that most countries are very corrupted. Right? So those countries are, corruption, bribery, extortion, those activities or behaviors are very, very common. So if you're gonna go over there to do business, even though you want to be ethical, responsible, however, you may have to get involved in this kind of unethical behavior simply because you need to do that in order to survive, in order to set up your business overseas. Okay. Another thing would be ethical behavior related to sustainability or environmental friendly behavior. As you can see, more and more companies are going that direction, right? Try to be more social responsible or environmental responsible. So whatever products that they produce tend to be something that environmental friendly, green, one of the green movement. Right? So that's another thing that you need to think about and keep in mind. You should use or you should pursue this kind of thing. Lastly, we have the new group of our consumers that we call them the green customers or consumers. These are the people that will support businesses that focus or emphasize on being green or being environmental friendly. And this is like a big trend that has been going on for quite some time now, and it is expanding. So in the future, if you want to capture this group of consumers, this is something that you really need to understand and know what you should or shouldn't do when it comes to creating quote unquote green marketing mix strategy. Right? That will be all for the content for today. I have some exercises that you guys could do, so please go and click on links provided on Canvas, finish the exercise, and then we'll catch up again next time.